Perfect. SPUD's been going as a charity only this year, and we became a new charity in May 2015. But actually, as a group of associates, we've been operating as a kind of an unincorporated organisation of people who are passionate about doing this stuff for over 5 years now. And myself and colleague Phil Smith both met working at the Solent Centre for Architecture, a regional architecture centre, working with other centres in the UK, doing projects where we brought people in contact with architecture, education, arts, engineering and so on. When the Solent Centre finished, we decided to set up SPUD 5 years ago, as I say, as a group of associates. And one of our first major projects was the Exbury Egg, which is still floating down the coast on the Beaulieu River, which was Stephen Turner's residence for 12 months as an artist, engaging with the landscape. As a result of the Exbury Egg and how successful that was and how much it caught people's imagination, we decided to follow on with a project, the Observatory. But unlike the Egg, which was a very private, very sensitive, very kind of remote location, we wanted to do a similar thing for artists, put them in really beautiful locations, really special locations, but this time make them publicly accessible, whereas with the Egg, only Stephen could really get to it. That was right for the project, but it was also quite a large frustration for people not being able to engage with it. So the Observatory came about for that. That was the rationale for it. So we set about doing a design competition. We had 40 entries from all over the world who were designing the structure. And for a kind of quite a long, difficult process, we reduced that down to this winning design by a young team of graduates from London who work for Field and Clegg Bradley Studios in London. They're all recent graduates, and an artist called Edward Crumpton. So we took their design and then we spent the next year working with them to realise this, to fundraise for it, and to identify all the locations, do the planning and so on and so forth. So today the structure launched in January of this year. It spent 6 months in Winchester at the Science Centre on the end of the South Downs, and then in July of this year it moved to Livington to sit here where we are now at Livington and Keyhaven Nature Reserve, and it will spend 6 months here until January 2016 before moving off down the coast to Burton Bradstock for 6 months in Dorset, and then finally down to West Cornwall, probably somewhere around the Lizard or Land's End, Sennan, something like that. So it's a 2-year project altogether. I'm a local person, I live in Leamington, so part of the reason for wanting it here was that I'm really passionate about this area. I absolutely love the nature reserve. I think it's, you know, a wonderful place where people come and obviously walk, enjoy, relax, bird watch, you know, exercise their dogs and so on. And it just makes such a special location for having these structures here. It's interesting, when people entered the design competition, when the architects entered the design competition, most of the submissions that were sent in were the photo montages showing what it could look like. Nearly everybody used Livington as their backdrop for their designs, which kind of was quite interesting that people had made that decision. And when they came here, it really looked like lots of the designs that we saw, which is fantastic. The reason for the observatory is that we've got 2 structures. We've got a studio and a workshop. The studio space, which we're sat in now, is weather-tight, glazed, insulated. It has solar power, it has a small charcoal heater, and this is the space for the artists to work in. So we'll have, over the 2 years, we'll have 12 artists working in this space, each occupying it for 2 months. So this is their kind of, I suppose, their private space to work, observe, reflect, look out of the windows at the incredible scenery that they're being exposed to. The other structure, which is identical in size, dimensions, is the workshop, but that one's open to the elements. There's no doors, there's no heating, there's no solar power, and the general public can go in. And we're finding that, particularly here in Leamington, people have absolutely taken ownership of the workshop space, and they're using it to picnic, they're using it as a hide to bird watch. We've had children climbing on the rigging parts of it and using it as a pirate ship. People have made it theirs, and that's absolutely right. We've dropped these 2 boxes into an area which is special to a lot of people, and actually allowing people to have access to one of the spaces has become really, really important. and it's become theirs. So the artist has a space, they have a space, but the two interact, they sit together comfortably. The other thing about the structures which make them special and interactive is that they have rotating handles. So each one has a crank handle and a gearbox, and they sit on top of a large metal frame which is sat in the ground. So it gives the illusion that the two structures, the two observatories, are floating above the ground. But you can come in and you can turn the handle and the whole unit, 4 tons, will rotate 360 degrees. So even a small child could go in the one next door and turn the handle and rotate it around, so you can take in the best view, you can turn your back on the weather, you can follow the sun, you can basically do whatever you want to kind of make the best of this location.
When the resident artists are here in the winter months, obviously this is an environmentally friendly structure. What happens when it gets really chilly?
We've got a fantastic little charcoal heater sat inside, so top it up with charcoal, a little bit of MEFs, and the space is warm within minutes. So they've also got solar power, so they've got lighting, they've got electrical sockets, and they've got access to rainwater as well. So they are fairly off-grid, and the toilets are a short walk away if they get caught short and need to pop down to the sailing club. We had no preconceptions of final outcomes, and that's actually really important. It's a very significant part of the project. In terms of the artists, we made a call for artists who were interested in the environment, interested in working in a landscape like this in fairly remote locations, who would produce work in response to it. So they wouldn't just take their studio practice and transpose it into this structure, but they would come here realising that they were in a very different structure, in a very special place, and their work would therefore be in response to that. What that work looked like, we had no preconceptions about, and our request in the brief was that there would be an outcome that could be presented to an audience, and that was as tight as we made it. Now, talking to the artists who have applied and the ones that have already gone through the residency programme, they found that incredibly refreshing. That a producer, ourselves, aren't saying we expect X number of pictures or X number of sculptures or this kind of exhibition by this date. We've left it very open. So that means we could have poetry, we could have video projections, we could have sculptures, we could have sketchbook work, we could have a performance happening in town. There could be a whole range of different things that can be presented to an audience. It makes it both exciting for the artists, the public and ourselves, because we're all on that journey together. Nobody quite knows what's going to come out at the end of it, and that's really important. The other really critical thing for the artists working in here, and an important part for us as SPUD and the way we work as a charity, is how the artist would engage with an audience. So we can see here, this is a really popular walking route. We get 150,000 visitors a year coming down the sea wall with their dogs, their kids and everything else. And the artists being in this space, it's a bit like a goldfish bowl. They need to be prepared to have those conversations and talk with people and share their practice and share what they're doing, and that's such an important part of the project. So it's not a space where you could shut the door and work in isolation. So there were a few different reasons why we wanted certain sorts of artists, but we had over 100 artists apply. Of all different disciplines, and actually it was an incredibly difficult job to reduce that down to the 6 for year 1. And we're just about to make the call for the artists for year 2 for Dorset and Cornwall, so that will be going live shortly. And we've already had, I think, nearly 90 expressions of interest, and we've not even made a formal call for the artists, so I expect we're going to be inundated again with people wanting to work there.